In this video, we'll be going over summary ranges. So you're given a sorted unique integer array nums, return the smallest sorted list of ranges that cover all of the numbers in the array exactly. That is, each element of nums is covered by exactly one of the ranges, and there is no integer x such that x is one of the ranges but not inside nums. So for each of the range, a and b in the list should be outputted as the following. So we have a to b if a is not equal to b, and we don't have a if a is equal to b, which is basically the starting value and the ending value. So for example, we're given this array 0, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. In the first range, we have 0, 1, and 2 because 3 is missing. So the starting value is 0 and the ending value is 2, so we get 0 to 2. And then the next range is 4 to 5 because 6 is missing here. So our next range is 4 to 5. Now our last range is equal to 7. Since 7, the starting range is equal to the ending range, we only need to put the single value here as a 7. Now let's go over the thought process. Now for each of the ranges, it is easy to find the start value. Now how can we find the ending value? Now if we are currently at index I with the value of x, how can we determine if x is the end value? So we can check the value y at index I plus 1, basically the elements to the next index. Now if x plus 1 is not equal to y, this means x is the last element inside the range. So for example, if we're currently at this index with a value of 2, we can check the next elements. So if 2 plus 1 is not equal to 4, this means 2 must be the end value of our current range, as we can see here, right? Now let's go over the pseudocode. So we'll first validate the input parameter. So if nums is empty, there are no elements, we can just return an empty array because there are no ranges or empty lists. Then we're going to create a list, ranges, to keep track of all the ranges. Then we're going to iterate through indices of nums, the input array, they're known as I. Actually, just one more thing we need to do is create a value start or a variable start to keep track the starting range. Now this value will be initially num0, which basically the first element inside our current array. Now if I is at the last index, or nums I plus 1, the current element plus 1, is not equal to nums I plus 1, this means the current element is the last element in our current range. So we want to, if start is equal to nums I, this means in our current range, there's only one number. So if there's only one number like this, we do not need to create the arrow. So we'll just add starts to ranges. Else, we need to create the arrow between the start and the end. So I'm going to add start and arrow and nums I to ranges. Now I want to update our starts. So if I is not at the last index, set start to the next element, nums I plus 1. Then we can return ranges. Now let's go over the time and space complexity. For the time complexity, we get O of n, where n is the length of the input array. We visit each index once. In our space complexity, we also get O of n, is our ranges list. Now let's go over the code. So we're going to first validate the input parameter. If the input array is empty, we can just return an empty list. Now we're going to create a list, ranges, to keep track of all the ranges. Then we're going to create a variable starts to keep track of our current start value, or the start value of our current range. Then we're going to iterate through the indices of an input array. Now if I is equal to nums.length minus 1, this means is at the last index, or nums I plus 1 is not equal to nums I plus 1. This means the current value, nums I, is the ending value of our current range. Now I want to ranges.add, we can just encode the range. We're going to create a method, our starting value and our ending value. And then we want to update our current start value. If I is not equal to nums.length minus 1, we want to set our starting value to the next element, I plus 1. Then we can return ranges. Now we're going to create a method to encode our current range. We're going to create a string builder to keep track of our range. Now if start is equal to n, this means we do not need to add the arrow between start and end. So we can just range.add or append start. Else we need to append the arrow between them. So we're going to append the starts, and then we're going to append the arrow, and then we're going to append the end. Then we can return range.toString, convert it back to a string. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section below. Like and subscribe for more videos that will help you pass the technical interview.